I am Micah Savell. I'm 74 years old. I want to take you guys on a journey with me from the grave to being alive, healthy, and happy, which has occurred over the healthy part has occurred over the last 4.5 months. But my problem started back in the early 90s when I began to be treated with medication for high blood pressure and other issues, and it just seemed like that it just kept snowballing and getting more and more. You combine that with the way that the lifestyle I was living between working and on the run all the time and eating and fast food, and so over a period of time, I got to a place that had reached the end of my rope. And what I hope to do with this video is to tell you what happened to me, where I started from, and the changes that have occurred in just a matter of even days. There were things that took place in days, not weeks or months or years, just days. Like getting off my diabetic medication in 4 days. I've been on it, by the way, for probably 10 years. In 4 days I got off. And I hope that if you watch this little video, it'll stir something within you that'll give you some food for thought to see if there's any application can be made in your own life so that you too can be alive, healthy, and happy. Over the last 3 years, my health continued to get worse and worse. I ended up with a scooter on the back end of my car because I couldn't walk anywhere. I've got a handicap tag on my car. I couldn't walk across the room. In fact, November of 2017, I'm on oxygen and a walker. Wasn't for a long period, but it was for a little while. I just could not seem to function, couldn't get things going. It was after that and talking with Dr. Mendola repeatedly and not seemingly make any progress, I decided to go to Mayo Clinic. So I went to Mayo and they ran a whole bunch of tests on me and said that they couldn't find anything wrong with me. They said basically, you've been under a lot of stress, you're the sole caregiver for your wife. We think you really need some counseling. You probably need to speak to a psychiatrist. And I said, I'm not depressed, and I said, I'm sick. I don't know what's wrong. And I said, well, we think that that'll help you. So I came back and I told Dr. Mendola. They said there's nothing wrong with me, basically, and I need a shrink. I said, I'm sick. I said, I got this problem. I don't understand it. So he puts a monitor on me for at least 10 days. At that time, when it's over, I go in for the consultation, and he says, Micah, there's absolutely nothing wrong with your heart. It made no misfires, no nothing. Everything has been fine with your heart. I said, well, then, can you refer me to somebody who can tell me what's wrong with me? And he says, oh, I can tell you what's wrong with you. I said, you can? He said, well, please do. He said, you have autonomic dysfunction. I said, beg your pardon? I'm sorry, what is autonomic dysfunction? I've never heard of that. He said, well, your body has two nervous systems. One you control, like turn your head, raise your hand, pick up your foot. You tell it what to do and it does it. The other one works behind the scenes and just does its job on its own as it's needed. It handles your heart rate, your blood flow, all your bodily functions. It controls. And he says, yours is screwed up. I said, well, how do I get it fixed? And he said, you don't. You learn to live with it. I do not want to learn to live with this. And then we had a brief discussion if I was suicidal, and I explained to him I was certainly not suicidal, but the way that I was feeling, I didn't want to live, but there's never crossed my mind to commit suicide at all. I figured that when my time's up, I'm gone, but I ain't going to have it long. Well, I asked him, I said, please write down, spell it out for me, give it to me what you say it is, because number one, I'd never heard of it. Number two, I'm sure I couldn't spell it, so I came home and did a search on Google so that I could see what autonomic dysfunction was. And from what I read, it talked about blood pressure being uncontrolled, and when I thought back about my blood pressure, where being so high at one point and so low at another, and was not uncommon for me to have 70 or 80 point swing in just hours. So I thought, well, maybe I've got that. Sometime in late January, early February, I was having lunch with a girl who used to work for me, Lori Willie. I was telling her what was going on. And a few days later, she called me and she said, Micah, she said, I have done an exhaustive search. In the continental United States, there's only one place that is doing anything on autonomic dysfunction. And she says, that's Vanderbilt Medical Center in Nashville. So I said, thank you, Lori. I'm going to call them and see if I can get in. So I called and they said, well, you'll have to have a doctor's referral before we'll admit you. So I go back to see Dr. Mandola and I asked Dr. Mandola for a referral and he refuses to give me one. So then I went to Oscar O'Neill because Oscar O'Neill is a part of that Health First group. So he sends all my records to Vanderbilt. They send back a bunch of paperwork to be filled out and then say we require 4 tests to be completed before he'll be considered for admission. So they call me and they schedule me for the test. I go down and they said, as it turns out, Micah, we can only give you one of the tests. We don't offer the other 3. Really? We'll have to see if we can find somebody that does. So with that, we couldn't get it done at Cape Canaveral, couldn't get it done at Woodstock, couldn't get it done at Paris, even called over to Orlando Regional. They couldn't do it. Well, now all this took time. Now it's on up. We're getting into end of April, early May. I get a call from Health First Group. It said, we can finally give you those tests now. I said, great. So where to go? Give me the address. So they give me the address, and I said, that address sounds familiar. Whose office is that? And they said, that's Dr. Mandola's office. And I said, well, Dr. Mandola's already predisposed as to what's wrong with me. No thank you, I'm not going. And with that, I came back home. I called Cliff, who was working with me, pretty much running my company, and said, Cliff, I want you to shut down Lake Washington and via our car wash, bring our key people to Merritt Island. I've got to deal with my health issues. I'm going to go till I can find a way. If I can't get in the front door, then I'll go through the back and try to go into ER. Took me 5 days to make that trip to Vanderbilt because I took my motor home. I went from one rest stop to the next rest stop to the next rest stop. I would drive 30 or 40 minutes, and then I would stop and rest. I was exhausted from just driving. I'd rest an hour and a half, 2 hours, and I'd do it again. When I got to Vanderbilt, I got there on a Friday morning. I made sure I was there early. I was there at 8 o'clock. Go up to the cardiac unit. Go to the desk. The girl says, could I have your name, please? She didn't give me a chance to tell her what I was there for. I gave her my name. And then she says, Mr. Savell, you don't have an appointment. I said, no, ma'am, I don't. That's why I'm here. And she said, we have an 8-month waiting list for that program. And I said, wow, well, I don't know, but if that's the case, I'll be in a campground out of town. I'm going to stay here until I can get to the bottom of this. If this is what I have and there's any chance I can get some help, I want it. In a minute, after we talked a little bit more, she said, why don't you go over and sit down and wait? I'm going to see if I can have somebody come and talk to you. 2.5 hours later, at 10:30, a lady comes out and introduces herself to me as Shelley, and she says, I asked her who she was, and she told me that she was the head of admissions. And I figured that if I had any chance at all of getting a toehold in, this was it. And I gave her the whole story, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'm going to go back in and see if I can't talk to one of the doctors and see if he wouldn't at least look through some of the paperwork that you've got. Apparently, he had taken his lunchtime and made a quick review of my file and said that, I think you've been misdiagnosed. He said, you don't have, from what we see in your file, you don't have the classical signs that we determine as being autonomic dysfunction. He said, but we wouldn't really know unless we can test you. I said, but if you don't think I have that, what do you think I have? And he said, well, I'm not as up to par on some of these medications as I need to be. But he said, it looks to me like that you have medications that are in conflict with each other that are helping create this problem. I said, wow. He said, we'll notify your doctors in Florida, and then they can begin to try to make adjustments. And I said, well, I'm here because I've lost confidence there. I said, I just, have you got anybody here that you think is competent who is up to speed on this? He said, yeah. I said, well, then could you please see if you could get me an appointment with them? And I'll just stay up here and wait till I can see them, and then we'll go from there. Everybody's nearly gone out of the waiting room now. It's just me, I guess. And I met a doctor named Gregory, Sean Gregory. Dr. Gregory spends more than an hour with me, Jim. He talks to me. He's got my file. He's reviewed my medications. He talks to me about medications that I took years ago. How did I have an adverse reaction to it? Why did I quit taking it? And he would just go through all of this. I'm here because I don't have confidence. Would you consider taking me on? I'll stay. I'll commute. I'll do whatever I need to do. But I have got to try to get over this and try to get a life. And he said, well, yeah, I'll do that. And he said, with that in mind, and he took his hand. I'm sitting closer to him than you are. He takes his hand and he says, do not ever take another one of these pills. He said, I think that is one of the major conflicts that you have. And with that, he said, call me in a week. With that, I was free to go. Call him in a week and let him know how I was doing. Well, I left. Wednesday, I thought I began to feel a little better. Thursday, I felt a little better, so I called him Friday morning. I said, I'm feeling a little better, so he stopped another one of the meds. They took me off 3 medications in its entirety and 3/4 of another. I mean, sometimes we would do a quarter pill, half pill, and just kept weaning it. And I began to feel a little better. And then they called me, and I had come back to Florida, and I was here at the house, and they called me and said they thought they would be able to adequately give me this test that I need to see about autonomic dysfunction to whether I really had it or didn't have it. When they finished with the test, they said, Mr. Savell, we can tell you unequivocally, without any reservation, you do not have autonomic dysfunction. Not anywhere close. You've been misdiagnosed. It's clear. We don't know what you have, but you do not have that. So with that, I went back to see Dr. Gregory, and he chipped away at another one of my pills, and I headed home back to Florida. I got it here on a Friday night in August. I guess that was 3 or 4 days before the 23rd, probably the 17th or 18th of August. And I'd had a really hard time. I was back feeling really lousy. Not quite as bad as I did last fall, but I was feeling really rough. Well, Saturday came, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and I kept going downhill and downhill and downhill. And Wednesday morning, I wrote in my journal, this is horrible. Worst I've had since November of last year when I was on oxygen and a walker. So anyway, I go to sleep that Wednesday night. 2:30 Thursday morning, I wake up, and I'm in excruciating pain. Most of the time, I've not had really severe pain, but I had a real tremendous amount of pain. Sit on the side of my bed, pick up my phone, first try to cut on the light, grab my phone, get my glasses. I'm going to call Cliff to come and take me to emergency room. And I'm just sitting there on the side of the bed, and I start thinking, it's just going to be more of the same. I'm 74 years old. I've had a good life. My kids are all in good shape. My estate's pretty well in order. Maybe it's just my time. They can prolong you and keep you alive forever. But maybe it's just my time. I think I'm going to try to lay back down, go to sleep. So from 2:30 in the morning till after 5 o'clock, I watched the clock. Miserable in pain, couldn't go to sleep, but I finally must have. I dropped off, and at 10 o'clock in the morning, I woke up. And Jim, I never expected to. Anyway, I got up, moped around the house. I was still in pain, still miserable. And I thought, well, I've always heard chicken soup's good for you, so maybe I'll go find some soup, get some salad. So I got dressed, got in my car. I must confess, I did think about even driving myself on the ER. I said, no, I'm not going to do it. I pulled up to the light at Highway 520 and State Road 3, and I caught the traffic light, thinking, well, now, because I didn't know where I was going to go get soup and salad. I could go to the right and go to the Olive Garden. I could go straight and go to Victoria's Restaurant, or I could go left and go to Kay's Barbecue out in West Cocoa, which is a place that I have eaten for basically 50 years and loved it. But when I was thinking about Kay's Restaurant, a couple of years ago, I'd gotten a bad shelf salad there one day, and when a girl put it down in front of me, I called her back. I said, honey, this thing is older than I am. Would you please ask him to go back and have him fix me a fresh one? And she did. When she came back, she set it down in front of me, and she said, sir, you eat a lot of salads, don't you? I said, well, I try to eat them. And she said, I understand there's a good little place next to Home Depot that has really good salads. But I never went. But I thought about it at that time. I'm the first car to the traffic light. I raise my eyes. There's Home Depot. I'm 500 feet from it. I go to Home Depot, turn in. I go in this little hole-in-the-wall restaurant called Alive and Healthy.
August 23rd, I was standing in the kitchen back by the sink, and I saw this man coming through the door out of the side of my corner of my eye. I tell the kids all the time that I have eyes in the back of my head because I can say, I see you looking for something, it's there, you know. And I saw this man walking up to the door, plodding, and I thought, oh, he's never been here before. And, you know, this is going to be, interesting. He doesn't look like he feels very good.
Young man comes over, and by the way, I shuffled to cross the parking lot. I really struggled to get in there. Young man comes over and says, sir, what would you like? I said, I'd like soup and salad. And the boy says, sir, we don't serve soup. We don't serve anything hot. And I said, this is a restaurant? He said, oh, yes, sir. This is a raw foods vegan restaurant. I said, a what? He said, it's a raw foods vegan restaurant. I said, give me a break. I said, I can't believe y'all don't serve soup. He said, no, sir, we don't. I said, well, I'm here, so maybe I heard you got good salad, so I'll just take a salad. Would you get me a menu? So he gives me a menu. I look at the menu. I called him back over there, and I said, you know, I understand the word salad, Reuben, and burger, but I don't understand any of the stuff that they say's in it. If you got somebody who can interpret it for me. So he calls the woman I got who owned the place. She comes out.
And I thought, I better go talk to him because I didn't know if he'd get to the chair, really. He was gray, and he just did not look well, like he was laboring to breathe. And so I think Matt came out to him before I got here because he's Johnny on the spot, and he talked to him for a minute, and then it was clear that I needed to have a conversation. So I came out, and I spoke with him, and he said,
I can't believe that you don't serve soup. And she said, no. She said, I don't serve soup or anything hot. She said, anything that's heated over 118 degrees, it kills the enzymes that are really beneficial to the body. I said, really? I'd never heard that. Because everything I'd eaten was cooked to the core.
And he told me the story about the doctors that he'd been to, and they'd diagnosed him with some specific syndrome and sent him, and then said, but we don't have a specialist for that here. So he found one in another state, and he went there, and he had just come back.
And I told her that I'd been to Mayo Clinic and had spent 11 years dealing with Health First and Homes, and had spent 7 weeks dealing with the people at Vanderbilt. And everybody can tell me what I don't have, but nobody can tell me what I do have. And she says to me, well, sir, I'm not a doctor, but I think I could tell you. Now, you have no idea what crossed my mind when this woman in this little restaurant said that to me. I've been to people got pedigrees 6 blocks long. And I got a woman in a little restaurant in Merritt Island, Florida, less than 1,000 feet from my office, that I passed by, didn't know it was there because it's so small, telling me she thinks she knows what's wrong with me. I said, well, then please tell me.
He said, they just don't know. Nobody knows what to tell me, what to do to make me better. And I said, I think
She said, it's your diet. I said, really? She said, yeah, it's your diet. She said, where do you eat? And I told her. She said, oh, it's your diet. My food will. And she said, my food will change your life.
I think what I have here will help you feel better. Because clearly he needed some nutrition. He was so exhausted. And I said, what I have here will make you feel a little bit better.
She said, what would you like? So I'm looking at the menu, and I said, ma'am, I don't understand anything on your menu.
He said, well, I don't know anything on this menu. Just bring me what you think will make me feel better.
But if you think your food will really help me, you go back in your kitchen, and you take your liberty, you fix me anything at all that you think will help me, but please don't put onions in it.
And he kind of rolled his eyes as I was walking away.
And with that, she disappears, and a little while later, she comes out with a little, probably 6-ounce glass of juice, puts it down in front of me, and she says, now, you chew your juice. Chew my juice?
Asked him to chew it, to not drink it, but to chew each sip 25 times.
Yes. I said, no, you drink juice. She said, no, this you have to chew. I said, really? Yeah. Why?
Because that allows the nutrients to mix with the saliva, which is where your digestion begins.
She said, because as your mouth chews the juice, it sets up saliva in your mouth that signals the body that different things are coming. And so if the liver needs something, as it's passing through, it takes what it needs, and the kidneys take something else, and just different things. Well, all this sounds awful fishy to me.
And he chewed it completely. I told him 20 minutes. I want you to keep this juice for 20 minutes. And he did that.
So I do, and she said I had 20 minutes to get this glass down. Okay, 20 minutes to drink 6 ounces of juice. Are you kidding? It's because of all I chew it.
So when he was done with his juice, I gave him a small salad.
And it's a real small salad plate. That's bigger than a saucer, but it's a long way from being the plates that I'm accustomed to eating on. Really small. And I said to her, and I regret this, Jim, I said to her in a really sarcastic voice, ma'am, I've had larger side salads when I ordered a steak than this. And she looked at me and she said, oh, sir, you probably have. But she said, I can tell you one thing, you have never had the quality of food that you have right there. And with that end of discussion, the woman turned around and walked off. It was over. I said, well, I asked for it. So I sit there and I start to chew it. And she's over behind the counter, and she's probably about 15 feet from me. And she says, sir, you chew your juice and you juice your food.
And I asked him to do the same thing with that he did with the juice. Eat it slowly, put his fork down in between each bite, and chew, chew, chew.
She says, you have to chew that 25 times. And I said, ma'am, I'm 74 years old. I didn't come in here to go to school. I just came in here to get some salad. And she said, you told me that if my food would do you some good, you wanted it. And I'm telling you that if you don't chew it properly, the way I'm telling you, it's not going to do you anywhere near the good that it could. So with that, I thought, well, I asked for it. So I began to try to chew it. And a couple more times before the meal was over, she hollered at me again, you need to continue to chew it. Put your fork down, chew it.
Until the food became juice in his mouth before he swallowed, which he did.
Well, after having made that little snide comment, I'll have to show you how much of the salad I had left when I got up, when finished. And I took a photograph of what I had left on my plate, because I was going to send it to my children, because my children would never believe in a million years I'd been in a vegan restaurant. I didn't believe I was in a vegan restaurant. So, but I had asked the lady to do that. She graciously had accommodated. She'd been really a wonderful host, in spite of the fact I didn't like the fact she was beating on me about the way I chewed and the way I ate. Then, as I stand up my pay, she comes up to me and she says, now, in 3 or 4 hours, sir, you're going to feel a whole lot better.
And I said, oh, good, I'm so happy. And in a couple hours, you're going to feel even better. And he said, if that's true, I'll be back for dinner. And I thought, okay, I'll probably never see him again.
I left her place. I came straight home. I am 4.6 miles from her door to my bed. I went straight, crawled in my bed. I got up at 4 o'clock, woke up at 4 o'clock. I called my oldest daughter and said, honey, I can't believe, I feel like I'm in somebody else's body. I can't believe what has happened. She said, it's all food. I'm telling you, I said, baby, it must be dope. I can't imagine anything could make me feel this good. But I don't care what it is. Whatever it was, I'm going back. I said, I told that woman when I left, I said, when she told me that in 3 or 4 hours I was going to feel better, I said, well, if I do, ma'am, I'll be back here at 5:30 for dinner. At 5:30, I was there.
There he was. He wasn't struggling to get through my door. He was walking through the door. Perky, and he said, you were right. I do feel better. And
I don't know what you gave me for lunch, but whatever it is, I want more of it. So she goes and she's preparing it. And when she brings and starts me back off, I said, and when you have time, I'd appreciate it. I'd like to have you come back. I have a proposition for you.
And then he asked me if I would be willing to engage in a 21-day program with him.
And then woman looks at me and says, do you smoke? And I said, no. She said, good. She said, do you drink coffee? I said, yes. She said, you'll have to quit. She said, do you drink alcohol? And I said, sometimes. She says, then you'll have to quit. I'll do it. You got a deal.
I agreed, and we began our journey. And in just a few days, he was feeling better and better.
It wasn't 3 or 4 days. From the time I ate my first meal there, I started this type of a climb. And it continued. But when I went to this little restaurant, and as this woman began to talk to me about her food, some of the things that I had seen in this video and heard from them came back home to me. And probably because of that, I stayed and listened to her rather than getting up and leaving. I'm not sure that I would have stayed and listened to her talk about her food and what her food could do for me had I not seen that video. In spite of how bad I felt, I probably would have left. And come to think of it, if that's the case, I probably wouldn't be sitting here making this video now. I'd be over there laying in a spot next to my wife. I'd only been on her eating her food 4 days when I got off metformin for diabetes. On the 5th day, I took the shower chair out of my shower. I'd had it in there over 5 years. What's even more exciting was 5 days later, I'm standing on one foot washing the other one. I wept. It had been more than 2 years since I had walked to that corner of this property. Only 200 feet. I couldn't do it. But I did it in just a matter of a few days after I started her food. And I kept getting better and better. And then I walked half a mile. And then I walked a mile. 2 weeks after I started, I rode a bicycle for the first time. I woke up one morning. My foot was itching. I reached down and scratched it. And I thought that was kind of odd because I hadn't noticed anything down there because my feet was just like it was calloused. It was solid. I had no feeling in it from the diabetes. So when I see her at lunch, I said, you know, I had a strange thing, and I told her that my foot had itched. I reached down and scratched it, and I could actually feel a little of it. And she started laughing. She said, "You're going to be surprised at what gets restored to you eating this food. Whole plant-based raw food." I'm in my barber's chair probably 4 or 5 weeks ago. She gets over there on the side of her head. She says, "Micah, did you know your hair's turning brown?" I said, "You kidding me?" She said, "Yeah, look." I said, "I can't see that." She takes some mirrors and goes over there, and I could see she had it kind of parted. Well, I can turn my head sideways now, and you can probably see from here that some of it is turning. And it's turning around back. My life has been totally handed back to me. I feel better. In fact, I told my daughter last Sunday when I talked to her, I said, "Honey, I don't ever remember having a 4.5-month run that I haven't even had a headache. I have felt nothing but absolutely wonderful. This is crazy." I had fungus in this finger. I also had it on my right toe. Been there for years. I had been treated for it, and it never went away. I didn't even realize it was leaving until a few weeks ago, and I happened to look down at my hand, and it was down here almost. It was, the black spot was still on the corner of that thing. 18 days after I'm on her diet, I'm left with 3 pills. 21 days after eating her food, I have 1 pill, and that's for atrial fibrillation, Pradaxa. 232 pounds was a milestone. That was at 21 days. I'd gone from 262, that's when I started, I weighed 262 pounds the day that I first ate with her. I need to understand, no, I'm not trying to lose weight. Losing weight was never the goal. The weight was a side benefit. The first thing had to do with my health. As my blood pressures are coming down, I'm still taking the same amount of meds. So I called my doctors in Vanderbilt, and I said, this is what's going on, and I'm changed my diet, and this is what I'm doing. I'd like to know, is it okay? Do you think it'd be okay if I half this pill or that pill? And they said yes, so we began to half it. So I started trimming it on my own, but because I was taking my vitals twice a day, I'm able to monitor it. So I thought, well, if I start going down too low or going too high, then I'll go back and I'll add the pills back. Well, I want you to know I never added a pill back, but I did continue to take them off. I sent Dr. Gregory a note and texted, and I said, you know, I'd like to go ahead and take this down. And he said, I advise you strongly, do not wean yourself off any further medications until you see me. And I said, well, I don't have another appointment with you till November. And can I get one? And he said, sent me to the desk. I couldn't get an appointment. Well, with what had occurred to me over 2 weeks, I was not going to quit eating her food. So I've either got to quit eating the food or quit taking the pills. On the Friday when I'd finished my 3 weeks with her, I called Dr. O'Neill and I said, would you please order up all of my blood work? Everything, if you've ever had any blood work at all, you've had any inclination to order, I want you to please order it, and then I want to come see you immediately. So I went Monday morning, had the blood drawn. Tuesday I went in to see him, and he officially took me off 17 medications with one swoop after reviewing my blood work.
In the 3-week period, all the medications were gone. He was just on good food now, and so 6 months later, we're best friends, and he's still eating good food.
But it is absolutely the quality of the food. I have no clue how Kimberly Smith, this woman who runs this restaurant, does what she does to the extent and with the authority that she does it, because that's really what it is. She knows what she's doing. When I tell you this woman knows what she's doing, I'm 196 over 108. She fed me. I came home, went to bed again, and when I got up, I was 146. A 50-point drop in 5 hours, all with food. Food. Not pills, not anything, just food. I love that woman. Whew. I thought that when she first told me about the program and the cost of it, I thought, boy, that's high. But I didn't care. I would have paid it anyway. Okay? I'm fortunate that I could have. But I look at it now and realize, man, at the money I'm saving. Do you know, in May, do you know what I paid on my deductible alone in May for all the pills I was taking? And I had pretty good insurance. My part was $776. I told my daughter, I said, honey, I'm glad I'm able to afford it. There are a lot of people who need medication that can't. But I was lucky. Of course, now I realize I didn't need it anyway. What I needed to do is get my act together and eat properly. Even here with this Forks Over Knife video, and I saw that. But that's not the first place that somebody made the suggestion that I changed my diet. I was going to see Dr. Rebecca Hunton, and she, on more than one occasion, told me I really needed to try to get my diet and change, and she's very much into good whole food.
So I started out, Micah, looking back to in the chart, because if you remember, I always like to do before and afters. And the last real set of labs I have on you is February 2014. Now you were here several times after that, each time leaving with a lab order promising to get on time. But the last real set I have is 2014.
Yeah.
And that's not, I mean, the getting the labs done, I joke with people, they all want to wait till they know they'll get a good report card. And so they don't necessarily do them before then. But I'm glad you did these. And some of these are newer. You know, I'm known to be a vampire and draw a lot more blood than the average bear. And some of the things I drew were with the lens of knowing that you've been vegan for 10 months now?
9 months.
9 months.
13 days.
13 days. And I can tell you've dramatically changed your body composition. How much have you lost?
101 pounds.
Phenomenal.
In fact, I've actually
And you
lost.
got more?
I've actually lost 112 pounds because I had to re-lose the 11 pounds
That you gained.
that I gained when I went off the diet for 5 days.
And one of the other remarkable things is he had snowy white hair, and the hair color's coming back.
Isn't that something?
From just an aesthetic standpoint, there are people out there who might change their diet just to get their hair color coming back.
And it's crazy. I would have never believed it.
I really haven't seen it as dramatic as it is with you. I mean, you are snowy white.
I'm telling you, it's just, it's crazy. The neuropathy in my feet is gone.
Well, your diabetes is gone.
My diabetes is gone. My hemorrhoids are gone. It's crazy. The fungus I had on my fingers and one of my toes, gone. It's absolutely unreal that it's done with food.
Yeah.
Food.
Yeah. But the labs that I ordered, the first one was microalbumin because back in the day his kidneys were really unhappy. And we had a couple of times where wanted a 24-hour urine and things like that, partially because of uncontrolled hypertension.
Yeah.
And they would tell you in conventional medicine that you can't reverse kidney damage. Mm-hmm. I think even conventional medicine knows that's not always true, that somebody who gets really dehydrated or something, that it can bounce back. But yours have come all the way back into the normal range with room to spare from
Right.
outside of that. So the microalbumin is beautiful. Your calcium is a little bit low. And so calcium is involved in a lot of things in the body, including how nerve cells conduct and muscle cells conduct, heart muscle. And calcium is also dependent on vitamin D. And the last time I saw you, your vitamin D was 60, which was like perfect. 60 to 80 for most of the research is where it's supposed to be. You've absolutely tanked all the way down to 18.
Okay.
So vitamin D is something we need to add back into your mix.
All right.
The bottom of normal for your immune system function is 50, so we need to get it up. So I would probably supplement there. But that's the first thing that shows up as abnormal.
Okay.
Then
The first thing?
the first thing,
Okay. Carry on.
the thyroid is also low. And the other part that's, thyroid, everybody, pretty much most people know iodine's part of thyroid. And when you talk about food and iodine, we never really had a good resource here in the United States. That's why 100 years ago they added it to salt, which I'm not endorsing. It was mostly to get rid of the goiter belt.
Right.
But shellfish that are wild caught, which vegans don't usually eat, is probably our best food source. So, and then we compounded the problem. We put fluoride in the water and chloride and bromide in our water and our preservatives. And so everybody goes low on iodine over time if they're not making an effort to bring it back up. But I think the bottom of normal is 52 and you're at 32. So you're significantly tanked on iodine. So that's something I would probably, again, take a supplement. But most people take a bottle and then they're done. And then a couple years from now, it'll slowly go down again, depending on what you eat and drink. So methylmalonic acid is a backdoor way of measuring your B12. And vegetarians, vegans, tend to go low on B12. It's probably one of the most common findings. And you're absolutely perfect. You're doing well. So I don't know if you just had a lot stored up from back then. Are you supplementing B12 in any way?
Well,
Ken might have.
I give myself an injection about once a month.
There you go. Yeah. So you're doing perfect there. Glutathione. One of the reasons I put that on there, glutathione's the brain and the liver and the heart's number one antioxidant. And our body's really good at recreating and recycling that. Unless we do things that pull it out of us. So pharmaceutical medications, wine and beer and alcohol, Tylenol, anesthesia, those kinds of things can bring in it, and hepatitis viruses and stuff can bring it down. And I know at one time you were on 30 some medications.
Well, I was on 19.
19.
19, and some of those were twice a day.
Yeah, it was like crazy number of pills.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of anticipating to see your glutathione low, though there are some food sources. They're not great food sources, but there are some food sources. But you're one of the highest, most healthy levels I've seen at 1,034.
Really?
So, attaboy.
Well, it's not anything I've done, I can assure you.
It's
I've just been the recipient
of Kim's food.
of her food, right?
Yeah. Your hormones, testosterone and estrogen, I'm going to pull them together. Estrogen's next on your lab draw, and your flagged is high. So elevated estrogen in a man is not good for cardiovascular health. It's not good for prostate health. It can make a guy a little PMSy, where he can cry at the drop of a hat or get irritable all of a sudden when their estrogens are high. And back in 2014, you had high estrogens then, but you had low testosterone. You were below the lower limit of normal, and you and I had several conversations about, I'm like, your brain needs it, your heart needs it. Now,
And I wouldn't do it because I said I don't want to get all dressed up. It's like putting on a tux and having no place to go.
I know, that's it. I was like, but it's more than just sex.
Yeah, well, took me a long time to get reconciled with that.
And so I'm presuming with these numbers you're on testosterone at this point.
I take injections every week.
So your injections are too much and too frequent. They
Okay.
need to be titrated because you're overshooting the level. I think your fundamentals are pretty good. These are just little tweaks I'm talking about. Nothing
Okay.
major.
First I said I hadn't felt this good in 20 years. I said that months ago. And then I told Georgia, my oldest daughter, 50 years. I told Sharon, I don't even remember as a child feeling this good. My life has transformed completely. Crazy. I guess I'm too high on estrogen. Let me start to cry here in a minute.
Could be. Yeah, the only thing I could say from a cardiovascular perspective, HDL is our large, healthy, higher, happier we are. It's cardiovascular dependent, and your levels as a percentage of total cholesterol are excellent. But the size, I tell people, imagine the trucks going out to pick up the trash. You can either have the little golf carts with the trash things that are out on the ball fields, or you can have the big waste management trucks. You're kind of down here on the small pickup size, which means you just need to walk a little faster. It doesn't need you to be crazy. You don't have to run, but get the pace up a little bit, and that'll move those trucks along. They're very cardiovascular dependent.
Okay.
Your diabetes, you went from, at the highest I have for you is 6.4. This one here is 5.4. That's gone from diabetes all the way, and that was with medication, all the way to stone cold normal. I had my lab 6 weeks ago. I was 5.4.
Now is that the A1C?
That's the A1C.
Okay.
Yeah. So congratulations.
Thank you.
That's.
And they say it's not reversible.
Oh, that's the other day. I'm always telling people you know,
Yeah.
this is reversible, absolutely
Well,
reversible.
I want to tell you this. I intend to stay the course. Only a fool would not.
When you feel as good as you do now,
When you've come this far,
I know.
I've been an idiot.
So does the culture put temptation in your way?
Not anymore. I don't give a damn what they do.
So Cracker Barrel doesn't call your name?
Not anymore. I wave to it every time I pass. So I remember when I spent thousands with y'all, maybe tens of thousands. No, I don't go anymore. Butter beans, peas, cornbread, all cooked to the nth degree, being a southern boy. And that's the reason why I asked Kim if she'd prepare my food for 21 days. They told me that's how long it takes to make or break a habit. And we did that, and in that 21 days I went off. I got onto one medication only. In 21 days I lost 32 pounds. I felt phenomenally great. I'd taken a scooter off my car. The shower chair was out of my shower, had been out for days and weeks. The changes were just phenomenal. I'd begun to walk where I'd had trouble walking hardly anywhere. It's just, and it's all done with food. Just food. And so many of us are non-believers. You know, you said to me, you really need to change your diet. You need to look at making somebody else trying to change it. I couldn't. I didn't know how. But I couldn't do it because I was a sole caregiver for my wife. I was still busy trying to work and run and everything else. And when you're traveling all over the place and you're always in a hurry, it's easy to go through the drive-thru, pick up a cheeseburger, fries, and a Diet Coke, and go on down the road and eat on the run. And that's been what my life was. This has to become a lifestyle for me, or either that I just go on out to forest lawn and lay down. I can either eat this way and be alive, healthy, and happy, or I can go back to being miserable, fat, and dead.
Micah is a unique. He's decided that this is a lifestyle that he wants to embrace because he wants to be able to enjoy the rest of his life. He never wants to go back to that scooter or all those pills.
I've eaten things that I never dreamed would cross my lips. This is life-changing, and it's not something that's not hard. But what is difficult is what we've been taught not to do. We've been told so many things that are wrong. And that's the whole thing in a nutshell. And you're going to unlearn some things that we all learned as children in school. You're going to learn about the food pyramids again and unlearning them, and you're going to learn that dairy is not your best friend. You're going to learn that meat, where people think that they have to have meat to get protein. As the lady at the restaurant said to me when I told her, well, you had to have protein, she said, yeah, you got to have beef. She said, well, what do cows eat? Think about that. They eat grass. And that's what I've been eating for 4.5 months, and I want to tell you what, I've never felt better. When I came here, I'd been everywhere else. I had no place left to go, and I didn't even think I was going to be here when I woke up that morning. And now here I am now, full of life, looking at the future. I'm in a place I don't ever remember being even as a young man. In fact, I've never been in this place in my entire life where I am right now. I'm alive, I'm healthy, and I'm happy. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Still some stuff in this that I'm not really fond of, that if I was going to go, I wouldn't do it. But if she puts it on the plate, I'm going to eat it. And I'm going to chew it 25 times.
Last year we had, or the last Winter Olympics, 7 of the American Olympians that came home with gold were vegan.
I'd love to see Dr. Hutton and Kimberly Smith somehow form some type of a cohesive relationship, because it could really work well for the public. I don't know how well it would work for them, but for those of us who are out here who don't really have a clue of how to get healthy, because it's so different than anything we've been taught. It's not taught in schools, and what we were taught in school was all wrong. What the government tells you right now, the Food and Drug Administration, is all BS.